and aside to this week's episode. We recorded this a few months back, so some of the information that we put out there for Garrett's live shows are a little outdated. Movie Live Star Wars Edition was incredibly fun. I was there. It was a great time. I highly suggest you go to February 17th at 7:30 p.m. at Phil and Mocha, the Movie Live High as a Kite Edition. It's going to be their next live show. It was great. You know, it's highly interactive. It's a very funny show with the panelists and Garrett and Dan. So if you're in the Philly area, head to Phil and Mocha on February 17th, 7:30 p.m. I'm going to be there. I know Dan's going to be there. I know Garrett's going to be there. I think I'm going to try to get Mike from Tellust and That's Entertainment to be there. So it's going to be a good, fun time. So check it out. And now on to our show.
Awesome. Just tell people they're awesome and mean it.
Awesome.
Did you have an awesome time? Did you drink awesome shooters and listen to awesome music and then just sit around and soak up each other's awesomeness?
Awesome.
That was awesome.
You guys are awesome.
No, you're awesome.
No, you are awesome.
Sir, you are awesome. Seriously.
Awesome.
Everything is awesome.
Welcome to Everything is Awesome. I'm your host, Kev. This is our very first episode. So, real quick before we get to our guest, quick synopsis of what this show is. I talk to people who I think are awesome, and they bring awesome things to talk about, whether it be what they do or what they want to talk about. So we'll see what our guest today has to talk about. Before he officially starts talking, I want to talk about him for a little bit. This man, there was a handful of people that I said, they're the people I want to talk to first, just because we have good conversations, they're good friends, whatever it may be. This is one of the guys who, like many people that will probably be a guest in the first couple weeks here, I have worked with before, and they've gone on to do bigger and better things than me. Hopefully this will change that around. But if you've listened to any of the podcasts that we've done before, you know this man. He started out on Happy Hour with me for a hot second, and then went on to do a podcast on our own with each other. He went on to do a bunch of great things in his own podcast and expand upon his comedy career, I guess, beyond that. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the man from I Like to Movie, Garrett Smith.
Thanks, man. It's a weird thing that people ask me when I do stand-up now, like, hey, how do you want me to intro you? Because it's, like, nice to have credits, you know what I mean? To, like, make somebody sound like they're interesting and cool. And I never know what to say. Because, like, I have an open mic, but it's like nobody knows that fucking thing. And then I'm like, well, I have a podcast, but like a few hundred people download it, and a lot of them are like in China. So like, I don't. I think I just peaked your mic already. I don't. It's just weird. It's weird to hear somebody be like the host of I Like to Movie.
And it's funny because I'm this guy that literally, because I've been excited to do this podcast. Because literally for you and I, we've been talking about doing this exact thing under a different show name, but we've talked about doing this interview, this podcast for like 2+ years now. I think I looked at either it was a Twitter conversation we had, or maybe a Facebook conversation, and it was almost 2 years to the date that I asked you, hey, do you want to do an interview? What day works for you? And here we are. So it was almost 2 years to the day.
Probably better that you waited this long. I'm certainly a more interesting person than I was 2 years ago.
And it was all for me, for us just sit down and talking, because we now the show that SMonday Pod, this podcast we used to do, which was about the Kevin Smith Podcast Network.
Yeah, which is crazy to think about now. Like, I reflect on that, and I'm like, we did a podcast about another dude's podcast.
But you know what? Someone else is doing that exact idea and winning with it.
Oh, really?
I think it's called That Man on Fat Man. And it's, I'm assuming it's, I never listened to it. So this is a lot of assumptions going on. I think it's like this show, but except that he just talks to Kevin Smith type people or fans or whatever. And they talk
it's
about
an interview show about Kevin Smith?
I'm assuming, because I assume it's like Fat Man on Batman.
Sure.
Which is how I described this show. This show, the original concept was Fat Man on Batman, except about podcasts. And then I realized that limited my audience to just like 5 people. So it was going to be a very short run show, which is not uncommon for me. But so I expanded it to Everything is Awesome.
Yep.
Which includes pretty much anyone. Like, I plan on talking to a friend from the South just because he has a Southern accent. I think it's cool. So, so there is someone is doing the Kevin Smith podcast show and winning at it. Like, I think he was. Did you see the picture of Kevin Smith with Hitchbot? When he did the Mars screening, like that dude arranged for Hitchbot to come back to New York. So that's where like we really, because you only did happy hour for a while.
I like a very little.
Do you remember how you got into happy hour?
I called in. I found like a Craigslist ad. I was like just out of college, and I was like, I don't know, I kind of want to do a radio thing. I think I could do that. And I don't know why I thought Craigslist was a place to find like a legit radio job, but there was like a post for like a radio job, and I was like, oh, sweet. And they were like, the audition is like on air, you call in. And I was like, that seems weird. All right, I'll try it. And then it was your fucking video it wasn't even on the radio. It was your goddamn video podcast. For people that, God, because now we're old. Like, I'm 31. Yeah. I was like 22 at the time.
Yeah, so this was it was 2007-ish? It was at least probably 7 years ago, if not longer.
It would have been like 09, I feel
09?
like.
Okay. All right. Happy Hour, that version of Happy Hour is probably when I started 2007 then. And then 2009, I finally lost all my co-hosts. And it was Happy Hour Idol is what it was called. And it came down to you and like one other person and like the Santoro who was like filling in.
Yeah.
Like, it was just, we had that natural flow. But you being a city boy and me being a suburb boy,
it was impossible.
But we found a way to make it work with SMonday Pod.
Yeah, that was fun.
Eventually, Academic Nerds.
Academic Nerds, which is a way better title.
Way better title. We could not limit ourselves to
Kevin Smith.
Kevin Smith.
God damn it! Why did I? Okay.
And then, so let's start there, I guess, with you. And you will drive this show to wherever you want to drive it to, whatever you want to talk about. But let's start there. So right out of college is where you kind of got your lust for podcasting.
I was thinking about this the other day. I have been podcasting for almost a decade.
Wow.
My first podcast was in 2006. It was
that's when like all the podcasts started.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I listened to Smodcast when there were only like 30 episodes out.
I do remember
when it was still hosted on, I don't even think it was called Quick Stop Entertainment yet. It was still called something else. Fred Media or something like that. It's that, what's that guy's name? I like him a lot. I'm really mad that I can't remember his name now. Hey, there's a dog. Welcome to the dog. Hey, there's a child here for the podcast.
There's a child here. Yes, my son. So another thing has changed is that my kid likes to talk now.
That's okay. Hey, Trey, do you, I don't know, do you remember me?
Do you remember Mr. Garrett?
No, probably not. You were a really, really small boy.
Yeah,
when I
think you were like a year and a half. You were about Aubrey's age when. You want to
shake my hand?
Give him a high five.
Give me a 5. Yeah, there you go.
Mr. Garrett used to come over, and we used to watch a show together that you're not allowed to watch. But we used to do a podcast too together, just like me and you do. Do you want to say something in the microphone, Trey? No,
I did. I used to watch the cartoon that's on your shirt when I was growing up, the Ninja Turtles.
Yeah,
I used to watch a lot of that cartoon. Has your dad shown you the movie from the 90s yet? Do you know? Probably not.
I have.
You have?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I have.
Yeah.
That's what I started him out with.
Man, that movie's great.
Yeah.
I will defend that movie. I really like that movie. I think it holds up.
I agree.
Yeah. Did he like it?
Yes. Yeah. You like the turtle movie, right? Which one don't you like? The one with the samurais? When they go back in time.
Oh, you don't like that one?
No one does. You can say no into the microphone. Okay, you can be shy.
I'll defend that movie to you. I think that movie's funny.
Do you like that one?
All I remember about it is when they first get transported back in time, Michelangelo ends up backwards on his horse, and Donatello says something like, "How do you steer this crazy thing?" And Michelangelo goes, "You're lucky. Mine doesn't even have a head." So I loved that joke when I was a child.
I think we've watched all 3 of them. He doesn't like the sword fighting one. I think because of the same like Back to the Future guns thing that you and I were talking about earlier.
Well, the second one's perfect then because they actually, I don't even know this, they weren't allowed to use weapons in that one.
He loves both of them. The first 2 he really digs. You really like the new cartoon, right, bud? Yeah. Who's your favorite turtle?
Yeah.
What? Donatello, the one with purple, right? That's your favorite. Donnie's your favorite. You know what? And I just peeked it. So I subscription boxes.
Buff too.
What?
I like Buff.
You like Buff?
No, I like Raph.
Oh, Raph. Yeah, you're like, yeah, it's because you got attitude too, just like him, right?
Yeah.
So I always wanted to do a subscription box thing, and it took me a while because I didn't want to commit to Loot Crate or anything. And I found the turtle box. You can see it hanging on the wall over there, the TMNT box. It was like $25, I think, with shipping, and not great.
Oh,
he got like some stuff that he liked. I got a pair of socks. I got a cool T-shirt. That red bandana was something that it came with.
Sweet.
A laser pointer came with it that has the turtle logo, but it was like all dollar store stuff. Like, I think if you really did some bargain hunting, wasn't worth $25. But you could, like, I justified it somehow to defend my purchase. Loot Crate, unless TMNT Box is going to sponsor this show, Loot Crate's so much better.
Yeah. I have not done any of those subscription box things. I don't know what they're about. I feel like I'd do one for like beard grooming, maybe.
I like the nerd stuff, obviously. So and my beard's not as luscious as yours, so I don't need that. Though it gets there if I let it. If I get,
I never used to do product in my hair, and then my beard demanded it of me.
I used to do product all the time, and then I went bald. I don't have it. That's why I'm wearing a hat. And
my hairline is receding as bad as the economy was when I went into my 20s.
That's there you go. See now so that kind of ushers in your stand-up career.
That terrible joke I just made.
Before we move on to we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Oh yeah, sorry. So I've been doing podcasts for like 10 years, I realized. So the first one was called Weekends. It was a movie podcast, which I've gone on to do, 3 more times. But I did it with my friend Tommy, who was like my best friend in middle school and high school. We were big movie nerds. I think we only ever made like 5 episodes of it. I was just learning how to do all of this. We were recording the way you and I did SMonday. It was like 2 separate places through maybe an early version of Skype, I think. And we basically had to like we would have to clap into our microphones when we both started. We have to go 1, 2, 3, clap, and record separate audio, and then I would put it on top of each other later to like sync it up. It was annoying.
Can you believe that's how some people still do it?
I know, it's crazy to me. I'm like, it's so easy to do this. You have no idea.
Because I have to find a remote way to do some podcasts for this show because we're gonna have some interviews. But there's a like call note or something.
Oh, I don't know.
There's something that I've used before that sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. If it works, it's great.
Yeah.
And it literally just records both sides of the conversation for you.
Oh man, yeah. We used a pretty good little app when we did SMonday. I forget what it was called. I used it to basically
it Hangouts?
Something, I forget. But it recorded both of us at the same time, and then later I could actually extract our separate audio feeds so that you could edit more if you needed to, which was great. It was a cool little tool. I forget what it was called. But yeah, so I've been podcasting for a long time, man, which is crazy because when I think about it, it's like this is a medium now that people are famous off of. And
super famous.
I've probably been doing it for longer than a lot of them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's people that were famous when they started podcasting at the beginning of podcasting remained famous. Certain people got famous off of it, and I remained the same the whole time.
I'm the same way. I stand by the fact that everyone I've worked with, yourself included, has gone on to do bigger and better things because I always it's always scheduling conflicts. Like it's I'm more grounded, obviously, with the children.
Yeah, you got
kids,
stuff. Man.
So like it's a little bit harder for me, but that's what this format's perfect for. Like I don't have to rely on one person.
No.
But I mean, I'm the same way, man. I started probably in 07, 08, so just a year or two after like podcasting kind of took off in 06. And, I just various shows that I did and, to various degrees of success. Probably the most successful is when not even my own show, but the Stabcast. Was one of the most successful shows I was on. The Zomcast got up there.
Oh, yeah. It got up there enough that you got shut down.
Yeah. Yep. AMC shut us down but we were using the Walking Dead Zomcast as the title. Yes. But there were other podcasts out there called The Walking Dead. I digress. So you've been doing this for 10 years.
Yeah.
To now, what I would say a very successful podcast, at least to the sense that you've spun it into a game show. Yeah,
we do. So I have a podcast called I Like to Movie. It's me and another comedian from Philadelphia named Dan Scully. Hosted together, we're both big movie nerds. We just, and our opinion is the internet is too... I was going to swear in front of your kid. The internet is too negative for just about everything.
Yes.
So we wanted to be very positive about movies. So a good example is we went to see Black Mass a couple weeks ago and did an episode about it. And that was not like the greatest movie I've ever seen. That was a pure 3-star movie. It's got like some really good performances in it. It's got some great scenes in it. Overall, it was like, it was fine or whatever, but like I feel like the internet wants to be like just poop all over it. I am trying so hard to use the cleanest words I can think of right now. It just wants to poo-poo all over it. I don't want to do that. I don't know. It's like it was not a terrible movie by any stretch of the imagination. I'd rather talk about like what is good about it and what is interesting about it and what can we, what is there? What does it give us? What can we actually talk about thematically about it? We do a lot of just sort of thematic breaking down of movies, which I love doing, and it's got a little bit of a comedy bent because Dan and I are both comedians. But what we have done is we've turned that into a live game show called Movie Live. That is a comedy show. It's sort of like Doug Loves Movies meets at midnight. It's like this. It's very visual.
I feel like you guys have been doing it since before at midnight.
No, it definitely
was it after?
It was a little bit after. We had a concept for some sort of show for it, but it took at midnight premiering for me to be like, holy shit, there's totally a way to do this. I'm so sorry. That was I can't help it.
Don't repeat words.
Yeah. I'm saying bad words, and I'm going to try not to say any in front of you. I promise. I promise that to your dad more than you. But it's a comedy show. It ended up being like a really fun, crazy comedy show, and it was only because I saw At Midnight, and I was like, oh, there's a way to do what Doug Benson does with Doug Loves Movies and have it be like a big visual interactive experience where it's not just, oh, the comedians are playing for you to win a prize bag. It's like, no, you're working with comedians as the audience to answer trivia questions that also are mostly jokes. Like it does have a lot of movie trivia in it, but it's also very funny. And it's literally every show we have like certain games we come back to, and then every show has a completely original game to that month's theme. So like we're doing David Lynch coming up here in a couple of weeks, and so we'll have a bunch of original games that are just David Lynch themed, and then we'll do some classic games that we do every month on the show. It's cool. It's really fun.
Yeah, no, and you've been doing it just over a year now.
Yeah, we just had our year anniversary show for the live show.
Yeah, and that was to me like huge. Like I read the guest list you have, and like I think the name that popped to me was Tommy Avalone.
Yeah, he's a kind of a local guy, but he has a documentary on Netflix called I Am Santa Claus,
which is fantastic. It's so good. I know him from the Kid Chris days.
I was going to say, you must know him. I know he runs in these circles.
He answered the phones, or he was a producer or something.
Sure.
I think his name was Monkey Ball or something like that on Kid Chris. And then he went on to produce like some slapstick movies.
Oh, sure, yeah.
What was the first one I saw? I know he works with a lot of wrestlers too.
Yeah, I know
like that's his thing. Like he's into wrestling.
Well, and I mean, he's got some great Mick Foley stuff in that documentary.
Yeah, I mean that is around Christmas. I like to watch like one Christmas movie a day for like 25 days, and that was one of the ones I watched last year.
Oh, cool.
And
Tommy will take that as a huge compliment.
Yeah, it was really good. Netflix has been a great place for me to find. Like that's where I watch new stuff. Is Netflix.
Me too.
Even if it's old to like everyone else, Netflix has been like my go-to. And like their original stuff is just fantastic.
It's pretty good, man. I feel like they're killing it.
I guess I left off with Tommy Avalone, right?
Yeah, we were talking Tommy. So
yeah, I know him from Kid Chris and watched. Yes, I Am Santa Claus was one of the ones I picked for that 25 Days of Christmas, and it was good. Like everything was interesting about it. Like not one thing was I didn't see many negative. I'm like kind of like you, where I try to find the positive in things. Like the gimmick with the the homosexual Santa was interesting.
Oh yeah,
like,
he found really interesting stories to tell within that community.
Yeah, and the fact that you can have a whole movie based on like what Santa does when he's not Santa is cool. Like it was just an interesting story to tell.
Yeah.
So yeah, Tommy Avalone was the big name that I saw in there. I know there was a couple other
we had Brian Anthony Wilson, who was an actor on The Wire.
Yes,
he's another local boy, and a really, really funny guy. Very cool to us to come do that. He played a detective like in the precinct on The Wire, who beats up Bubs in the first season. Is the most fun thing that he does on the show, if you can call that fun, I guess. And we had Dan Angelucci, who is a Philadelphia filmmaker. He produced a commercial that I was in, or it's a fake commercial actually, but got him some real commercial work, which was funny. That I got to do a voice for. It's called Introducing Garrett. You can find it on Vimeo, and hear me doing a little voiceover work.
I heard you doing some voiceover work on YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
Was it the addicted to drug one or something?
Oh, I did one for my roommate has a very cool I don't know what you would call them, like a little comedy video group.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds so dumb. He's gonna hate me for saying it like that. They're called Dance Father Dance. You should look them up on YouTube. And I did a very cool voiceover for them for like a fake reality show. I was like the voiceover for it.
Yeah. Okay. So it was a different because I watched a couple episodes from them.
Yeah.
'Cause I think the one you posted was your second one, so I was hunting down the first.
Yeah, I did one where I played like a dad. It was also another reality show thing. I was like a dad on a reality show that was like kidnapped. That was really fun. You can see my beard in illustrious YouTube vision in that Dance Father Dance video.
That was your big 1 year anniversary show.
It was a big 1 year anniversary show. It was a lot of fun. It was cool.
And I've been trying to get it out to him. I don't know why I didn't make any of the summer ones. I really didn't have an excuse except for lack of babysitters.
That's fine, yeah.
But you're telling me about by the time your episode comes out here, you're doing a big one in December.
We're doing a really big Star Wars show in December. We're going to do a game show about Star Wars. I don't quite know what we're going to do for the panel yet. We're going to try and get some exciting people if we can. Yeah, that's going to be fun. Star Wars is that was the nerd thing that I grew up with.
Yes,
so.
and you and I started discussing this earlier when we went to the store.
Oh yeah.
And it was like I didn't know how much of a fan I was. Like I watched the original trilogy when I was a kid. Yeah. I remember watching the first one, episode 4, with my uncle, and I remember like the first time you see I'm a poor fan because I don't know other names. The Sand People.
Oh yeah,
the Tusken Raider.
The Tusken Raiders. Yep.
The first time you see him and he pops up. Yeah. Like I remember that scaring me.
Oh yeah.
And just I am a fan of the original trilogy. I've read like one extended universe
like a book or two.
Series of books. Yeah. But beyond that, like I would never call myself like a hardcore fan. Like I just assumed other people were bigger fans than me. But this is what did it for me. This is when I knew I was a fan. And I think Jurassic World did the same thing to me.
Okay.
Where I'm watching the trailer and, I'm digging the new trailer. I'm digging the new movie, like everything. And this is the first trailer that comes out. And then the music kicks on. Yeah. And it's the classic, John Williams score. And then you see the Millennium Falcon flying and like goosebumps, legitimate goosebumps I get through the, watching it, and I was like, I'm a fan. Like I loved this.
Dude, when Han Solo shows up at the end of that second trailer,
the second trailer is equally as
came and cried at the same time.
Yeah,
it was amazing.
I didn't know that Star Wars meant that much to me because it is. I mean, I would say we're second generation fans of that. Yeah, I remember going and seeing probably the remastered.
Yeah, I saw the special edition ones in theater. Yeah.
I remember seeing that with my father. But I was lucky enough to experience it pure first, like on probably VHS. Kids VHS is this big box that has a tape in it with film that has the pictures.
Magnetic tape.
Look it up, Wikipedia.
Yeah.
But I didn't know I was so excited for it. So I'm actually really excited for that game show you guys are going to be doing.
Yeah, I think it's going to be our game show is going to be fun as shit, but I think that movie's going to be cool.
Yeah, there's no way that doesn't make $1 billion.
Well, there's no way it doesn't make $1 billion. There's certainly a way it could be terrible. We saw George Lucas make his own series terrible a few times.
I mean,
but I am excited for it. I think it has a high chance of being pretty great.
I think the benefit of having JJ do it is that like he is a fan, and from what I've heard, George has had nothing to do with it.
Yeah, I don't think he has much input. But I mean, he thankfully does. Abrams hired like a lot of George's creative team for it, which is great. Kathleen Kennedy is still there, and like all those people, which is cool. I'm just excited for that movie, man. I don't know. Like, how could I not be excited? That Han Solo moment at the end of that trailer. Of course, I'm there. You sold my ticket 100 times over.
Yeah, I mean, I plan on. I don't go to midnight movies anymore.
Right.
It's not a thing that I do. I'm going to the midnight showing.
I don't either because I'm almost 30 and I fall asleep.
Yeah, that's my problem.
Yeah.
I'm just old and tired now. But I'm going to a midnight showing of Star Wars, and I haven't seen a movie more than once in theater in a very long time. Like probably maybe in my 20s. Unless it's terrible.
Right.
I mean, I don't. I don't think it's gonna be. I think JJ
I think even
cares
the prequels
too much.
I saw multiple times in theaters.
I didn't see the first one in the theater. That was more so like back then I wasn't as embracing like nerdom. Like you remember the period of when I switched to like Nerdy Kev, nerdykev.com. Like when I heard a certain age, probably like my late 20s, where I just kind of embraced my nerdom. Like when we were kids, it was a shameful thing to be in.
Oh yeah,
but now jocks watch Star Wars. So it's not really that shameful to be. I wish I embraced it earlier.
Right.
So the prequel trilogy I wasn't really in the zone for. I kind of remember the episode 3 not being terrible.
Yeah, it's all right.
But that's because it gets a little darker.
Yeah.
Kind of like how if you look at the Harry Potter movies.
Sure.
I mean I like all of them. They're all good.
Oh man, those first two are.
But they're tough.
They're hard.
They're tough to
They're
get
really
through.
rough. They're just Christmas movies for kids.
Yeah, and they are. But you're growing. You're watching it grow. Like the movies grow with the characters, which is neat.
The third one is still my favorite one.
Yeah,
I think
definitely.
that one's great and totally sets the tone for the rest of that series.
I agree. But yeah, so and Jurassic World I mentioned that earlier. That did the same thing. I think I remember reading your
I
review.
was not crazy about that movie.
You know what? The preview did it for me.
Yeah.
Like and I guess that can kind of be a worrisome thing about Star Wars then. But yeah, the music is what got me, a nostalgic factor. But you know what? For me, Jurassic World was the best movie since the first one. It's the movie they should have made after.
Yeah.
But I do like reading your review. Like, I think I enjoyed it more than you did.
Yeah.
But it's Owen was Chris Pratt's character's name. Claire.
I think
Maybe.
you're right. I don't know.
But aside from that, it is not.
My thing with that movie, I felt kind of similarly as I did about the new Terminator, although I'll say the new Terminator is probably not as good as the new Jurassic Park. But it was just like I had a really good time watching those movies. Like I enjoyed the experience of watching them in the theater, but there was like nothing to chew on once it was over. They were sort of pure spectacle, which is kind of fine, but like I don't know, the first Jurassic Park is a real story with three-dimensional characters that I can talk about later and really invest in, and I never really felt that way about anybody in Jurassic World.
I wonder if
what the hell is Vincent D'Onofrio's plot line? That makes no sense. So his whole thing is he's like, hey, thank God you guys genetically developed these killing machines, these trainable killing machines. Now we can finally replace humans with trainable killing animals. But lions, tigers, bears, the other trainable animals that have existed on this planet for thousands of years, you don't have any interest in those? Those weren't cutting it? You needed to wait for dinosaurs? Your plot makes no sense.
That's true. Though I thought he was good in that movie.
He's always great. He's a ton of fun. He's always great. But he's, I don't know. Daddy? That plot line didn't make any sense.
I agree, and that's my fear for the sequels is that, okay, here's my problem with the Jurassic Park World sequels.
Yeah.
And the series in general. We've now seen 4 Jurassic Park movies, and I have a whole story about Jurassic Park because let's start with my thought process here. We've seen 4 Jurassic Park movies with 3 different formulas of how to do the movie.
Yes.
It's only worked with one formula. So what are you going to do beyond Jurassic World now? Like you can't do a theme park again.
I've seen Colin Trevorrow talk about this a little bit, the director, who is not going to direct the sequel, but I think he's like producing it and writing it with the same guy.
Yeah, he is writing it.
And he said something about like that actually what we're talking about, D'Onofrio's thing about like potentially militarizing these things and the idea that B.D. Wong's character might be trying to sell this technology, that's sort of going to be the next stage of this will be the democratization of the technology. I don't know if there's an interesting you know what, there could be an interesting story anywhere. My thing is I think something that is sorely lacking from a lot of blockbusters, not all of them, are characters that we care about and have a reason to be in the story, and they grow throughout the story, and we're less concerned with the plot of Dinosaur Island and more concerned with the plot of how Owen will solve the problems on Dinosaur Island. That I don't think that ever happens in Jurassic World, and I have a growing fear that as these movies get bigger and grow, there will be less and less of an investment in the characters.
I mean, I'm excited for it. I'm excited to see where they go. And now my other Jurassic Park story is so Jurassic Park 1, the original. Yeah. Prior to seeing Jurassic World, I had only seen twice, once in theater and once on VHS. Yeah, and then I bought it on Blu-ray. Yep. But watched it once before Jurassic World to just get reacquainted. I watched all three of them. So the first one, of course, was great. Like still just as like the goosebump feeling that you got that from these old movies that are just so good. Which I feel like for kids today, that might be Jurassic World for them. I mean, if that's what they're starting, like my nephew loved Jurassic World. Yeah, loved it, and has. I think he's seen the first one, but he doesn't care for it.
I feel like the first one you could show to a potentially younger kid than you could Jurassic World, though. Jurassic World was like kind of crazy. It was more of a monster movie than they've ever been.
Yeah, oh, definitely.
Like there are monsters in that movie, and they monstrously tear people apart. There's only like one or two sequences in the first one where it's like that kind of violent. Yeah. However, Steven Spielberg is just a better filmmaker than Colin Trevorrow, which is no slight to Colin Trevorrow. He's made 2 fucking movies. Yeah. One of them was a really small budget movie that I liked called Safety Not Guaranteed. Yeah, actually, that's not fair. He's probably made more movies than that. Those are just the ones that have gotten any kind of release that I've been able to see. Yes. And then he made this huge movie. Which is, if you read the story, is crazy. It's not even a decision that was made. They didn't like see the small movie and go, he'd be perfect for our huge budget Universal movie. That was actually almost like a series of happy accidents that he ended up making that movie.
And now he's going off to what, Star Wars Episode 9?
Of course he is, because he just made one of the highest grossing movies of all time. But I don't even remember the point I was about to make about him. Nope, lost it. Totally lost in the mire of that thought.
He's not as good as Spielberg.
God, yeah. He's such an effective filmmaker that I think overall Jurassic Park ends up being scarier, and just because he's a more effective filmmaker. But I think Jurassic World, if we're talking about like a young kid watching it, I feel like it would be scarier to a young kid than Jurassic Park would. It's just got more like people being torn to pieces by monsters.
Yeah, but that comes with the whole plot of Jurassic World, like, and which, they do make a good point, like in the movie itself, like you got to go bigger to have an audience, I don't agree with.
I don't know how I feel. Here's the thing: I don't disagree with that. That is a fine commentary to make, because that certainly feels like what's going on in Hollywood. But I feel like that movie was trying to have its cake and eat it too, and it didn't really succeed at it. It was trying to be like, wink, 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 look at how terrible Hollywood's getting, trying to make things bigger and badder. Everything's got to be bigger and badder. Look at how bigger and badder this movie is because of it. Yeah, you're right. It's bigger and it's badder. It's not as good. You ended up doing exactly what you were trying to like make fun of. So it's like that commentary doesn't work for me in the movie, because the movie is the thing they're making fun of. They didn't avoid the trappings of that by winking at us and going like, we know we did it. It's like, yeah, I know, but you're trying to be like, I didn't want you to do that. I don't know.
The hope that I have for the next 2 sequels of this, and this maybe will be the final thought on Jurassic World, is that he wrote it in mind, with his writing partner in mind, of the trilogy.
Yes, he did.
And he's if you listen to the Jurassic Park cast,
that's a podcast, I assume.
Yes, the Jurassic. It might even be called Jurassic Cast. I just heard of it because he was on it.
Cool.
He was apparently on one of their very first episodes.
Very cool.
And then he was just on their most recent. And I'm not going to repeat the quotes because I'm terrible at doing that.
Sure.
But Jurassic World is based off of Ian Malcolm's quote about, God created man creates dinosaur, or whatever he said. Mm-hmm. This next one is going to be based on the fact that of Grant saying, dinosaurs and mankind separated by 65 million years. What do you think is going to happen when you put them together? Yep. So that's apparently the plot of the second one, of the second Jurassic World, which to me, at face value, makes it sound like a lot like Lost World.
Yeah, I know.
Which I don't want to see. And that's
I think about that too. I'm always like, they kind of tried this though. They did that like King Kong ending to Jurassic World.
Which now I remember. Final thoughts on Jurassic Park here. Yeah. I remember going to see the Lost World as a kid and kind of enjoying it. Mm-hmm. And then watching it on DVD and not really liking it as much.
I'll tell you this. I actually revisited that movie just a couple years ago and liked it more than I remembered. But in that way that it's like, oh, I mean, this is it's so subpar comparatively, clearly, to the first one, no matter what way you slice it. And so it was more like, oh, there's more to again, the way my podcast is, like, oh, there's more to like here than I remembered, you know? Like, I forgot about Vince Vaughn. I'm seeing you out of the corner of your eye inspect something, and it's throwing me off.
I'm paying attention to my kid. That's all.
Oh, is he just dancing around on his own in the backyard?
Yeah, I don't know where he had my phone dancing around on the grass.
Leaving your child to play?
Yeah, well, we got a fence in the backyard.
You're right.
Yeah, and the third one I remember not liking as much.
Yeah,
and revisiting that on DVD and Blu-ray, and just before Jurassic World, and it wasn't as bad as I remembered.
Oh, okay.
I was able to find positives, whereas I was finding more negatives on The Lost World.
I feel like there's an interesting thing where if you wanted to, you could say the timeline of these movies is actually Jurassic Park, Jurassic World, The Lost World, Jurassic Park 3. That doesn't totally add up or make sense, just with like the technology that exists in Jurassic World. Yeah. But if you think about the stories that are told, they like chronologically make sort of sense to be told that way.
Yeah, because if you think about, like, my argument is,
because Lost World is like on an abandoned island, right? So that would be after World, and Jurassic Park, and it's even on that other island that they mentioned, I think, a few times, where they were growing the dinosaurs or whatever in Jurassic World. And then the third one is like somebody lost on the abandoned island, which again seems to make a little more sense after the big theme park thing.
Yeah, and my argument, and maybe if that is the plan, like, that makes total sense then, because otherwise, like, what, like, someone has to say, yes, you can make a dinosaur island. Oh, you had a T-Rex in San Diego that killed people? This is a good idea.
Supposedly, they sort of ignored the other two sequels when writing this one, and I think they'll probably continue to do that as they write these sequels to Jurassic World. But I agree with you, and so to me, the solution is just don't bring it up. Like, write those movies as if those other two don't exist, and don't bring that up. You'll have a better movie. But we live in this age of the internet audience that's going to be looking for, like, well, but this doesn't add up. Like, you already took one to San Diego and people panicked. Like, why would you do it again? So I wonder if they will feel the need to address it or not.
I hope they don't, because it's, from what I read, that they're saying, I think the last thing I read is that, like, it's not necessarily out of canon. It is, like, they're saying that the other two may be in canon, but they just don't address it for that reason. So they're like, who cares?
Yeah.
So that's Jurassic World rant.
Yeah, sorry. I didn't mean to take us down there.
No, that's fine.
I knew this was going to happen when we sat down to
I know.
talk.
I love it because it is 2 years. We used to talk about movies all the time.
All the time.
But so I like it. Let's go deviate back to the interview for just a moment.
Oh, yeah, please.
So, I feel like that your podcasting led you to stand-up comedy?
A little bit. I mean, it was more indirectly than that, actually. Like, I did theater in high school. I played music in college. I've always liked performing. I like performing. I think I'm good at that. Podcasting certainly helped me develop a speaking voice that I think is very listenable and stuff like that. But it was more because I like podcasts so much, and I like podcasting so much that I listen to a lot of podcasts. It's a weird sentence to say podcast in so many times.
I get it, though, because I'm the same exact way. So.
And Pete Holmes has a podcast called You Made It Weird. He's a great comedian. He had a show on TBS for a little while. People might have saw, after people might have seen.
He's a College Humor guy, too.
Yeah, I think he's produced some videos for them. But he had a podcast, or has a podcast, called You Made It Weird. And in the early days of that podcast, he was not like a big famous stand-up comedian yet. He was like on the rise. He was like right on the cusp of like really breaking. I don't know. Maybe he'd feel insulted for me to say that. I don't know. But he was talking a lot about his early comedy career and how he got into comedy. In the first 30 episodes of that show or so, I still say, like, if you're interested in comedy, listen to the first like 30 or so episodes of You Made It Weird. They're like a handbook to starting stand-up comedy. No one, it's, you always hear people, like, you hear people ask artists all the time, like, well, if you want to be a this, whatever, like a painter, how do you do that? How do you get into that? And, like, the answer is always this weird wishy-washy thing of, like, there's no real way in, and I don't know how I started. I just kind of, nobody is willing to give, like, direct answers to, like, process questions. Like, how do you write a movie? Everybody that writes a movie will be like, there's no real process. They give you, like, no real concrete answer.
I just wing it. That's what I've been doing.
That's what everybody says. The first 30 episodes of Pete Holmes' podcast are like, you find open mics. They do exist in every city. This is how you find them. This is who you talk to. This is how you act at one. This is who you ask and who you don't ask about things. These are questions you never ask somebody. These are questions you should ask somebody. It's great. It's a beginner's guide to doing stand-up. And I had been thinking about it for years. I grew up on stand-up comedy. I've always really liked stand-up comedy, but I always thought of it as a thing that like you don't do. You either are one or you aren't. And I started doing it then. I don't, I've got a funny story about how I the first night I went to an open mic and stuff. That's not even worth telling necessarily, but it's podcast indirectly I think led me to stand-up, but not necessarily because like I was doing a podcast and I was like, listen to how hilarious I am all the time for 2 straight hours, because I'm not. I barely survive 10 minutes sometimes. I do. I always had an interest in it, and having somebody finally be like, "Yeah, you can do this, man. It's not hard to figure out the how of it, the how of like getting to a mic and getting up on stage. The how of actually being a funny person is like, fucking that is inexplainable. I don't know.
I mean, I don't think you can't explain being funny.
Yeah,
because that's you're funny to me, but you may not be funny to person B.
Listen, I could find you person B through Z. They'll all agree with person B.
But that's what I want to say. I always wanted to be a filmmaker or podcaster, obviously. That's new world technology for podcasting. But I've always wanted to, I remember being in high school, I wanted to talk. I just wanted to talk. And then,
storyteller.
And I will never claim to be anything but a storyteller because I have an interest in writing books. I wouldn't call myself a writer because I'm not great at writing. But I can tell a story. I can outline a story and say, this is the story I'm going to tell. And then I'll leave it there for a couple of years and eventually get back to it. Same thing with, movies. Like I'm not a screenwriter. I'm probably not even a director. I've directed like 1 or 2 things in my life. And I would never call myself a writer or director. It's a storyteller. And that's what I enjoy. And that's where you are more critical of movies than a lot of people I know. The only other person that I know that's even more critical than you is my buddy Mike. And
I got to talk to this guy.
It would be fascinating. I think I actually had an idea to pitch it was actually Trailer Park. It was before you did Trailer Park. I wanted to do coming soon.
It was trailer trash. It was slightly better pun than the one you just made.
I'm sorry.
Slightly.
I'm sorry. It was. I listen to the show all the time. I actually wanted to email Mike about it. Mike Bauer it, and say, "Yo, can I have the rights to trailer trash?"
He won't give it to you. I know Mike.
Because before you guys did that, I wanted to do coming soon with Mike and Garrett, but it was my buddy Mike and you doing it was gonna be a video cast versus a podcast, but. You two, I think I would love to sit down and just listen to you two talk about movies because he's very critical, not just about movies, about anything. Because I don't know if he would call himself an actor.
Sure.
I would not call him an actor, but I would call him a.
I'm sure he's very happy to hear that.
I would call him a. He has the ability to do it, and he is. I mean, he's my actor. He is my Ben Affleck if I'm Kevin Smith. So, but that's where he's really critical because he has acted. He has had some speaking roles. He was in SAG. So he finds criticism in acting and stuff, and whereas for me it's got to be good storytelling. That's all I care about.
That's always I'm a little more concerned about that. Performance. Performance enhances that for me more than
I will. I will forgive bad performance, bad dialogue, as long as the story makes sense and is good. Now, that doesn't mean you can be a piece of shit actor. And get away with it. And I do recognize extraordinary acting.
I think so. Here, I'll give you 2 examples. Last year, I think, there was this great movie called... Why can't I remember the name of it now? Coherence. I think that's what it's called, Coherence. Okay. It's a great, great, great independent science fiction movie. My line about it is it's the smallest budget, the highest concept, smallest budget movie I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. It's such a small budget. Hardly anything happens, but it's the biggest science fiction idea I've ever seen in a movie. It's great. I totally recommend it. Full of B-movie actors.
Okay.
Not all of them great. Some of them pretty good. I don't think there's really a performance I would call great in the whole movie. Maybe the lead actress. Everybody else is serviceable more than anything else. It's such a great, well-executed movie and story that it's okay that the actors are not elevating the work in the way that better actors might. It totally works without that. My favorite movie last year was called The Guest, and that is just a great movie across the board.
That's in my Netflix queue
Gotta
because
watch
of
it.
you.
Gotta watch it.
I haven't listened to your episode of I Like to Movie.
Good.
That's still in my
Good.
my podcast queue. Because,
Don't read my review.
Yeah.
Don't listen to the podcast. Watch that movie and then read my review and then listen to the podcast. It's a great movie. It's great across the board, but the lead performance is outstanding. It is outstanding and elevates that thing so high above what it is already doing. And it is all because of that performance. A lot of it hinges on that great central performance. So it's like I can recognize it, but I'm more in line with you where it's like I think just a good, solid, well-told story can be delivered even by not the greatest actors.
And I think for me that comes from being more of a television person than I am a movie person.
Sure.
Like, and that's that comes with the fact that like I don't go out all that often.
Quality of television is going way up though.
And it has, and like for me, like I still think The Walking Dead is one of the best shows out there. It has its ups and it has its downs, but it's based off a comic book, and comic books have their ups and they have their downs. And I wouldn't say there isn't a lot of great acting all the time in that movie or great dialogue, but for the most part, most episodes from A to B are a great story. And that's for me, like a lot of television to me is like that. Like I watched Once Upon a Time. Last night's premiere was great from point A to just before point B, and then it gets to a point where like, well, you just ruined your whole episode and the acting's not great at all in that show.
Oh, really?
I mean, there's a lot of good people like Jennifer Morrison, who I think is a really good actress, is in it. Robert Carlyle, he's the best part of the show.
Robert Carlyle a lot.
He is the best part of that show as far as an actor is concerned. And I mean, he was barely in it. In fact, I think he's in a coma in the episode. So, they have a lot of their high-end actors like sidelined during this episode. Still a good story until you get to the end, and that's where like your
what season are they on?
5.
5. Okay.
And it is like their lowest season so far. Like it was like it's in line with their season finale last year, but like down like 40% from the season 4 premiere. So I think they could be on their way down. So I mean, for me, it's all about storytelling.
Me too.
But I can recognize how it could be important to have quality actors as well.
They can totally elevate something, I think, above and beyond.
And for me, like I said, they might not be able to destroy something. I mean, it has to be bad. It has to be so bad.
It's. I mean, I think the reality is if a script is good enough, if a filmmaker is strong enough, they're not going to have to make their movie with bad actors. You know what I mean? That's why you rarely see something that's destroyed, I think, by a bad performance. You rarely see something that's like, man, that could have been the greatest thing I ever saw if it wasn't for that terrible actor.
It's and that's why I don't think it's ever my critique. And usually, if it's a filmmaker I enjoy too, or an actor I enjoy, I will always find the positive. Always, for Tusk, even like.
Oh man, that movie is. I had so much trouble recommending that to people. I was like, listen, it is so weird. It's so weird, and I thought it was great. I really liked it. I
still don't know if I like it or.
That was what I
not.
used to say. I used to say like, I have no idea if I liked that movie, but I know it was weird as shit, and I enjoyed that about it.
I mean, I watched.
But
it.
I think in retrospect, like I do kind of like that movie.
I need to go buy it still because I've only watched it.
I only saw it in theaters.
I didn't even see it in theaters. But that's nothing against Kevin Smith. I just don't go see movies in theaters anymore. But I acquired it, and I do want to buy it because I'm a huge Kevin Smith supporter. Even with movies that might be a little silly, like Red State.
I like Red State a lot.
Now I don't remember what our opinions were when we first saw it.
I remember I loved it.
Because I loved it up until a certain point. Now each time I've watched it at least twice, maybe 3 times since then, and I do officially like it now. But it took me, I think because he built it up. He built it up so much, and then it got to a point where it goes from the horns blaring, spoiler alert, to it's 3 years old if you haven't seen it. More than 3.
It's got a very Coen Brothers-like ending.
But it ends on, for me it ends like a Kevin Smith movie talking. Like it's just a talking, dialogue-driven movie. I wish he had the money to do a bigger ending. Because I think that's what that was.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's joked at that Q&A.
Oh yeah,
you saw it.
I posted that thing.
Yeah.
I was the first person to I think get that news out into the world. I posted a clip of Kevin talking at the premiere of Red State, which I went to see.
Yeah, I was there too. I was at the.
Oh right, yeah. I forgot that we were both there together. Well, like not together, but we were both there. Yeah,
yeah. We easily could have. That's
totally.
when I met. I had to remember because Jen and I love Impractical Jokers.
Yeah.
And
you got to hang out with them, and I missed it.
Yeah, I went to the bar and I mean, hang out very loosely, but I had to remind Jen that we know Q. Like, I mean, I say that we said hi to him. We exchanged pleasantries.
Yes.
Very friendly. This was when I think he was still a firefighter, so like he had no beard. Brian Johnson was there. Very friendly. Like everyone, that whole gang is all very friendly.
I've met Ming before, and he's like a super friendly dude.
He's super social.
Guy. Yeah. But I like Red State. I think Red State is really interesting and pretty good.
It took me a while to get on board.
Tusk, I think.
I would agree with that. Yeah. Tusk is
just weird as hell, and I love that it's so weird and committed to its weirdness.
I need to see it again. What I love about it is that, and this is all because of Kevin Smith, but it takes podcasting seriously, and it was the first thing in traditional media to kind of take it seriously.
I think so.
All right, we're going to have to cut the show right there, but we will be finishing our conversation with Garrett next week about podcasting in popular culture and the references that have been made in Tusk and other media. We'll also be talking about the horror genre. We'll be talking about Kevin Smith and Moose Jaws, Back to the Future, Ang Lee's Hulk, and much, much more. So make sure you tune in next week right here on awesomepodcast.com to listen about more of Garrett and our conversations in pop culture. You can find us on Twitter at ThatEntertains. Find me on Twitter at HHWST. Find Garrett on Twitter at Philadelphia, and pretty much any social media will probably be tagged with Philadelphia for Garrett. You can find his podcast, I Like to Movie, on the internet. Just search I Like to Movie on like the Twitters and the Facebooks and stuff. And so this has been Everything is Awesome. I'm Kev, and you're listening to this only on awesomepodcast.com.